again. This is going to be Simic Tempo. This deck totally created specifically to beat all these jerk-offs who are playing Welkin Acid-Moss, which includes me sometimes. Whole thing is you play one of these 2 flyers on turn 2, hopefully. Play one of the myriad of 3 drops, either more 2/1 flyers, or you tap down their guy with Bounding Krasis or Frost Lynx. Whirler Rogue is kind of like a push through at the end. Adverse Conditions takes care of your Ulamog and stuff. That's pretty much it. This deck is... this is an aggro deck. All it cares about is attacking. When it doesn't attack, it is susceptible to losing, but it does not lose often. In fact, despite my last video having a loss with this deck in it, this deck infrequently loses. So I'll probably just go 0-3 in this video. And yeah. Usually people talk about choices, spell choices on a tutorial, a deck tech, but we'll kind of just worst hand ever. Way too many disperses. Alright, so this is also not a great hand. We're on the draw. We'll keep. We certainly need a forest. So basically, the Disperse is in this deck. Disperse is not a great card, but Disperse breaks up Infectious Bloodlust. It puts it in the graveyard. It breaks up a variety of other pump spell combinations. Just got there. Look at that. Just getting there like a getter. A go-getter. A go-getter. Oh, not getting there. Denied. Every time, man. Every time I think we're gonna do stuff, I don't do stuff. So, Mr. Control over here. First of all, I just want to say it's, yeah, Esper Control, very infrequently seen. But I will say, this is even less frequently seen. Horribly Awry is just not something people play very often. Hitting turn 2 creatures it's nice, especially if you got some sort of way to like process these things, like Blight Herder or something, but in general, it's not that big of a deal. Against Control, I think I'd rather get a Jhessian Thief on board. Jhessian Thief is actually the stone worst card in this deck. I had 3 of them, I kept cutting them, I think there's just like 1 now. Even if there's 2, it doesn't matter. Like, this card, it's great, obviously, when you can draw cards. It almost never gets to draw cards. It's good against decks like I'm going against now, because they will try and kill it, and I don't actually care if it lives. Like, it's nice if I draw a card against Control, but it's not the end of the world if I don't. This is usually like a Gideon's Reproach type of thing, and I'm almost compelled to just let it happen, because I'd rather have this Eldrazi Skyspawner. Celestial Flare, basically the same thing. I could prevent it, but I'm not sure I care. I wanted him to use it. It's sad to say that about Jhessian Thief, because it's so threatening and it seems so good. One unfortunate thing about this matchup is that the Simic Tempo deck, it's really just tempo flyers. Like, all it cares about is putting like 2-power flyers out and tapping things down. The unfortunate thing about this particular matchup is the deck was made to be good against Acid-Moss ramp and decent against mono red, but we were going against Control, which is actually not a great matchup, but it is. But Esper Control is actually just not good right now. Even if it's decent against our particular deck, it's just one of those rock, paper, scissors situations where we're kind of aggro. We just want to do 4 damage in the air, and they just happen to be board wipe and counterspell centric, which is the opposite of what Manwolvi Acid-Moss and Infectious Red do. Yeah, I don't care about this. I hope he makes a guy. He doesn't have blue up, so we're not going to get counterspelled. All that's going to happen is Celestial Flare at worst, and the Celestial... Well, actually, Gideon's Reproach actually is worse. Celestial Flare, we can actually just sacrifice this Eldrazi Scion, but... We're going to attack everything at Gideon, just in case he has that Celestial Flare. We want to make sure it dies. I'm not going to play anything because we're ahead on board, and it's pretty likely that he'll board wipe at some point if he doesn't already have it. If he attacks here, it's supreme likelihood of a board wipe. Oh. Yeah, that seems fine. I'm gonna tap that guy down. Him drawing cards actually doesn't matter. I mean, usually it does, but it doesn't in this case. Because he's always gonna have more cards than us. It's just some shit we gotta deal with. I know it seems like bad to just play a land, but we actually did need that. Because, well, actually, you know what? That may have been a mistake, because I forgot that I could use this Scion to cast this Disperse. That is actually annoying now. Because if he was to planar Outburst, I would want to bounce one of these things. Languish. We are going to bounce something. It's going to be this Bounding Krasis. That was actually a really good draw. I mean, if he horribly Aried us there, it would be not great, but... So here, pretty decent chance this Bounding Krasis gets counterspelled, but we're going to let him untap anyway, because we don't want to just play it out and get board wiped. We'll see what he does. Our main concern is stopping Shambling Vent from doing things. This is actually an insanely good card, by the way. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4 things in it, so he's got 2 mana and 4 things. That's fine. We're gonna block, flash in. I'll tap down this thing. Pretty much what we're going to do is when he spends some of this mana to untap this Disciple of the Ring, we are going to bounce it and make him replay it. I mean, I guess he could untap. Well, I mean, he can untap 2 things, which is pretty aggravating. I really wish I could play this island. I mean, I guess I could if I dispersed first, but whatever. We're just gonna attack with both of these things. Let's see what he attempts to untap. Yeah, so it's pretty awkward. I think instead we're just gonna play this Whirler Rogue. It's unfortunate if he activates one of these shambling vents, especially since we don't really want to let him draw this time. It almost would have been better to, like, figure out how to make this adverse conditions work, because now it's just going to get countered no matter what by multiple Disciple of the Ring activations. Okay, so he's going to Languish, which is, I actually care slightly, to be honest. The only reason that it's even remotely beneficial is that the Disciple of the Ring is now dead, and that is the hardest thing for us to beat ever. This is just, in general, pretty horrendous. We're gonna bounce this. I don't actually think we can win. Which is funny, because, like, I talk such a big game about this deck, and then it just loses 2 games in a row when I record it. But, I mean, never say never, because, I mean, the amount of games I've won with this deck is obscene. I'd be like level 400 in this game, not 39, if it was for this deck's wins. It's pretty insane. Playing against Control is, it's a patience game, but sometimes you have to overextend to even have a chance, which is weird to say. That's why Control's a little tough. If you don't overextend, sometimes they just have the board state on you as it stands. And if you do overextend, you'll often get double languished, like we did this game, which is super irritating. But, I mean, he's got 1, 2, 3... I mean, he essentially used 4 rares. We're gonna tap this down, because fuck that. He can counterspell if he wants. Bad draw, that land. There's no pump spells in our deck, so there's no way to, like, get to that 4 damage. My plan at this point is to just get some kind of flyer on board, get in, probably block this thing with a Scion, sack it in response so they don't get lifelink. And that's really all you can hope for. Because now he's going to have his Scion of Stagnation and these lifelink lands. Like, we are super unfavored to win this game. Unfortunate. This is actually quite a good draw, except for the fact that he 100% is going to have a counterspell, and it'll probably be a Scatter to the Winds, given the fact that he did not play Sire of Stagnation either of the last 2 turns, which means he just is holding that 6 mana for Scatter to the Winds. It's almost guaranteed. And unfortunate, Scatter to the Winds is definitely going to lose this game, because, I mean, he plays it this time. I think I'm going to hold on to this Bounding Krasis. It's not a vital situation. Scatter to the Winds, called that. I hate to let him untap with blue mana again, but I don't think we can win without tapping things down, so we'll have to keep this Bounding Krasis. Unfortunately, when we tap things down, the best we can do is 4 damage. We really need another adverse conditions, which is great for this exact type of situation. We're going to try and block this lifelink thing. If he has another counterspell, we lose the game. but we were losing anyway. That's a pause. Yep. I'm not going to block. The game's over, so I concede. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. Let's just concede. There's a time factor in this video, so unfortunate that everybody got to see me lose like the only times I've lost in like 3 months with this deck. But it happened. That is 0 for 2 on the record. Oh boy. I don't think Esper control is good. I've tried it, and it loses very, very badly to most of the decks people play often. When Wolvie Acid-Moss breaks up its mana really, 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 really easily, and a Tarka Red, or, I'm sorry, the Infectious Red is just too fast. All our hands are terrible. It's pretty unbelievable. This one's okay. Decent 6. I don't want to act like my last game I didn't have a good hand or a good draw. We drew the 2-drop flyer. We drew a forest on time. Like, everything was fine except for the fact that our opponent had a pretty decent draw for a deck that actually beats us. Our opponent playing mono green. Well, I don't know. I guess he could actually be elves still, but I mean, based on the common guess, or you know, the common opposing green, double green, it's usually some form of green ramp equipped with a turn 4 Acid-Moss. There's been a lot of talk about Wolvie Acid-Moss and how fair it is or whatever. It is not fair. I mean, I have it in a few of my decks because you can't play any kind of control against Acid-Moss unless you have Acid-Moss. The Esper control that we just played would have lost badly to an Acid-Moss. It just gets behind, it can't do the things it wants to do. I'm going to attempt to kill this Nissa with a flash-in, but I suspect that what's going to happen is he will Wolvie Acid-Moss my island, and I'll be forced to just tap it down instead. Alright, well, it looks like he didn't get I mean, I could have countered the Acid-Moss too, and I probably would. That is actually correct to do. But I am itching to kill this Nissa. I've done this ambush before, and my opponent almost always quits unless they have a pump spell. Which is just the name of the game in Magic Duels, is people getting blown out and quitting. And they had the pump spell, so that's okay. Primal Bellow, I mean, if you read it, 1/1 for each forest you control. He's playing only forests, so that's just a gigantic amount of damage sometimes. Much better to just kill the thing. Or, I shouldn't say kill it, but, you know, get it out of his hand. You know, trading a 3/3 Bounding Krasis for it is not the worst thing in the world, even though it would have been way, way better to kill this Nissa. It was worth the try. Whirler Rogue is a great card. It's actually not super spectacular in this deck because it's a little bit slower than we're trying to be, because we're just trying to attack. Mainly the thing we want is these 2 flyers. To hammer it home, like, I don't actually care if they want to trade with this this Whirler Rogue, or if they want to do a pump spell on it. I'll just attack into it. If he wants to trade it for the 2 elves or a pump spell, that's fine. I probably won't counter the pump spell. I don't care that much. I'd rather counter something that really matters. We have 4 power on board. We could put them on a 2-turn clock with Eldrazi Skyspawner. I think that's probably a good idea. We can still Spell Shrivel by sacking these 2 Scions. I don't expect anything to come down that's too threatening. Worst case scenario, it's Nissa's Renewal, which we will counter because I don't want them to gain 7 life. There it is. That is a Nissa's Renewal, folks. And he has quit. Alright, so it worked this time. You put flyers in the air, you counter the thing that's gonna matter, and that's it. I mean, the computer could win. It's happened before. It's not worth flashing in because it'd be better to just, I don't know, tap down a blocker or something. Although we can't because this is the blockers now. Aligned Hedron Network hits 0 things in our deck. We're going to tap down one of these Thopters. Otherwise I would have flashed it in. Oh, Fog. That's actually pretty annoying. Fog is not a good card. Just want to let you guys know. I know that it has some functions, but it's just complete and utter. It's a loss of a card. I know that, well, I mean, the thing is like when people play it, it's usually in the best or worst case scenarios only. So this was one of the worst case scenarios. The best case scenario is you prevent damage one time and then you crack back with all of your guys and win. The worst case scenario is this particular game where they saved their life for 1 turn and then they immediately died. The thing about those Acid-Moss decks, and the reason why this deck is particularly good against them, and we were against one, they just didn't have Acid-Moss, is because you start off with an O2, which is not a threatening body, but it gets their mana, and then you follow that up with a Nissa's Pilgrimage, which does nothing. I mean, it gets lands, but it does nothing to the board state, really. And then they turn 4 Acid-Moss. And that's usually where the game turns, because then they have a 6-drop or something that beats you. The reason why it doesn't beat this deck is because this deck is supposed to get a turn 2 flyer out and a turn 3 flyer out, and then it doesn't have to actually play any ground guys, really. Like, all those guys, the Bounding Krasis, it's not really for attacking. It's mainly for preventing them from attacking or tapping down opposing flyers. This hand isn't great, but it has a lot of draws because we have all our mana and we have a turn 2 Welkin Tern, which is great. Obviously a land is almost the worst draw we could have gotten there. There's actually plenty of creatures in this deck. I think there's like 23 or 24 maybe. That's quite a bit. Whirler Rogue, once again, amazing creature, one of the best creatures in this game. Not exactly what we're looking for just yet, but it does provide the 4 power in the air. It just does it a turn late. Like, we could be Acid-Moss before we get to play it. And it's very likely that we will lose our blue source anyway because of this thing. Yep, we'll be playing this. So we're actually doing pretty good on land, and considering our opponent got to go first, that is actually the biggest argument on the forums, is that, you know, if everybody's playing Acid-Moss, whoever got to play Acid-Moss first, meaning our opponent, gets to win the game. And our deck is supposed to prevent that from mattering. I mean, it was obvious he was going to Acid-Moss, and he did. But I want to note that our opponent has played nothing. He prevented us from playing this Whirler Rogue because he got to go first, but look what he did. He didn't do anything. He put a land on the board, and then he technically put another land on the board, and if we had a 3-drop, he would be at, like, what, 14, and then he'd be at 10, and it wouldn't, and, like, yeah, like, what does Jolly Offshoot do? It's going to gain him some life, fine. Actually, I take that back. Jolly Offshoot is actually pretty annoying. But what's more annoying is that we didn't have a 3-drop. Yeah, double Jolly Offshoot. That might actually be enough to get into this game. Another land draw. We're just drawing so bad. Yeah, he's completely negating Welkin Tern with his deck now. But, I mean, look, he's got 2 cards in hand, and this Woodland Bellower isn't a factor. We're actually currently on pace to lose to Jolly Offshoot, and we're not necessarily on pace to lose to this Woodland Bellower, based on what we have in hand. But half of our flying power is taken down, so he's basically on roughly an 8-turn clock. And they're just so dedicated to this Acid-Moss. It's really pathetic. Like, yeah, it's a really good card in this format. Obviously. Obviously. Because everybody uses it and they win a lot. But, I mean, all of my decks that use Acid-Moss use it in order to fix mana. I use it in order to get a red-green land, a white-green land, so I can cast more colors. Using it in mono-green is strictly to ramp, which is just mindless and degenerate, and actually not the best way to use it. I really want to play Adverse Conditions, but we may need to start attacking with this Lumbering Falls. So we're just going to take an additional hit from this 6/5 probably. You know, the thing about the 6/5 that's unfortunate is we just cannot bounce it because, well, at least until towards the end. Because they'll just get a 3rd Jolly Offshoot, which will just make this even more difficult to win. 10 mana. Like, if you just happen to have Ulamog in hand, that's just lucky. But I'm not gonna bank my whole strategy on the fact that he's just gonna ramp, and just happen to have Ulamog. Like, you know, if you're playing mono green, you're only drawing land, you're not drawing anything else. So if you're drawing land and not anything else, then if you're drawing land and not anything else, it's basically like you're just top drawing. You know, like he has 42 cards in his library. I have 46 or 41 now, so he's like on a 5 card. It's almost like he drew 5 cards, but all those are lands. Now, if he keeps drawing lands and gaining life with Jolly Offshoot, that's not ideal. I'm going to Adverse Conditions this next turn. I'm half interested in leaving back this Whirler Rogue. Oh, I am going to leave it back. It can't get in anyway. Because if he Gaia's Revenges, we're kind of up against it. Basically what we're trying to do is just put as much power on board for when we get to actually swing through with this Lumbering Falls. So we got 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 with the token. And he has Ulamog, so that's just the silliest shit. It's actually not fair that that happened. I'm gonna float this mana, and yeah, that's pretty unfortunate. He's just so lucky. Like, that is just unbelievable luck. Like, he had a land and a Ulamog. It's just so lucky. It doesn't mean we're gonna lose, but it does mean that we don't get to almost win. In fact, if he just had nothing in his hand, he would be at 1 and unable to attack, and now it's just different. Play this pre-combat so we can get this additional 1 damage in. With these offshoots doing what they're doing, we're gonna probably need it. This is the type of deck that, you know, we were designed to beat. As you can see, like, he played giant things. We had an answer. He's got a thing that gains him more life. If his last card is a land, yeah, that is just obscene. That is actually just obscene. Like, he just gained 4 life when he was dead on board. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so he was dead on board, and he got exactly that thing, so that's what happens when people are super lucky at this game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have to tap down this Ulamog next turn. I'm debating as to whether it's worth bouncing this It's Woodland Wanderer. I don't think it is yet. If he draws like just a giant creature next turn, then we're in okay shape. Him drawing a land is actually the worst possible thing, though. It's just too much life. Another thing that's great about Bounding Krasis is when they have Gaia's Revenge, we also get to tap that down, even though it's almost completely hexproof. It's not 100% hexproof. So he might have a fog here. The fact that he didn't play anything concerns me. I'm still gonna bounce one of his things. If he fogs, I'll just bounce Ulamog. We still got a bunch of Primal Bellow. Sure. So he lost the game. And we won. So there it is. This is another late night one for me. I don't know why. I just can't get it together. But this is kind of the way the deck works. You saw even against like lucky, rampy, Ulamog draws, like, this deck still wins. It still gets there. I know I'm just, like, the worst pessimist ever, but that's just me thinking and being cynical and feeling like I need to be up against it. It's like, you know, I put a chip on my shoulder so that I can win. I'm going to do some more deck techs with some of the other ones, but I'll probably come back to this one, because this one, you really need to look and see how easily it wins, even though the first game was not a win. But there it is. Till next time.